I am Iris Calder. I am 30 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon. My days flow like a careful river through a city that loves rain and coffee and the sound of distant trains. I work as a graphic designer in a small firm that feels more like a workshop than a business, a place where colors and ideas mingle and the air smells of wet paper and possibility. I have a quiet kind of confidence that comes from years of listening to people talk with their hands and learning to read a mood the way some people read a map. I am not loud, but I was in a relationship with a man named Jonah, a warm smile that could soften a hard day, a person who believed a home should feel like a shelter and a promise. I trusted him in a way, like a city trusts the river to come back every spring. I did not think much about little cracks in the wall, or the way a text message could slip through a seam of honesty, until the cracks grew larger than the wall, and the seam became a chasm. In my world, there had always been a simple rhythm: a steady job, a small circle of close friends, my camera in a bag that reminded me to look for truth in ordinary moments, and a plan for the future that did not require dramatic shifts. Then the day came when that rhythm started to tremble. Act 1. The character is in a situation with a problem. I am Iris Calder, and I am a woman who loves order, who loves to see a piece of art come alive when the light hits it just right. My world was this calm, practical life until the whispers began to feel louder than the rain on the windows of our apartment. At first, I noticed small things, little oddities that did not quite fit the image I kept of Jonah. A late return from a walk that ended with a text that made him smile in a way I did not recognize, a joke that drifted into a tone I could not place, a message that disappeared as soon as I walked toward the phone screen. Then came the moment that felt like a sudden gust of wind that blew the pages from a book I was reading aloud to myself. I caught sight of a message on a screen that did not belong to me, a message that did not say the kind of thing lovers say when they share a life. It was a line that spoke of closeness and secret meetings and plans for later, and it did not carry the weight of a harmless flirtation. It carried the weight of a betrayal that makes your chest ache and your hands shake. I did not need more pictures of proof. I needed truth, and truth had a way of arriving with the coldness of rain on a window pane. The day I finally faced him with what I had found, I could not pretend the ground under my feet was solid anymore. He denied it with a calm that felt like a lie dressed in a suit. He told me it was a one-time mistake, that it did not mean what I thought it did, that I was overreacting. I did not break down in that moment, not in front of him, not in front of the apartment that had once felt like a sanctuary. But inside, a part of me broke into shards that could not be glued back in the same shape. The next morning, I did not leave a note. I simply packed my essentials, looked at the place that had a history of our shared mornings and small rituals, and walked out with a quiet resolve that surprised even me. I left while he slept, and the silence that followed was the closest thing I had to a verdict. I blocked him everywhere because I could not stand to hear the excuses again, could not stand to see him in the same light as before. The world felt suddenly too bright and too cruel a place at once, like walking into a room that had been swept clean and leaving a window open to a storm. Act 2. They try to solve the problem, but fail, making it worse. The days after the rupture feel like stepping into a room with the lights off and knowing there is something waiting to be found if I can only find the switch. I go to work with a heavy chest and a careful step, trying to pretend that life is still ordinary, that the day will unfold like any other. But the air in the office has shifted. People glance with curiosity, and I notice the way yellow tape of rumor slips around corners, the way someone will ask you a question that feels personal when it should be about a project. Then came the moment that felt like a punch, a moment that changed the shape of my days and the way I looked at the world. During a lunch break, a coworker named Dale pulled me aside with something that sounded like a plan for a simple conversation, and ended up being a declaration that made my blood run cold. He told me, in a way that was too easy and too casual, that he had no intention of apologizing for what had happened because he liked my boyfriend. He said it as if the words made sense, as if this were a fair trade in a world where honesty had a price and betrayal came with a badge of boldness. I could not hold back the anger that rose like a tide inside me. I was so close to punching him in the face that called for a risk I did not take because I believed in a different kind of justice, one that did not require flipping a table or shouting into the room. I told him that he could have her, because I believed, perhaps foolishly, that I would rather walk away clean than stain my own hands with a reply that would only make the situation louder and messier. Then I looked him in the eye and said something that surprised even me. I told him that I would be speaking to the Human Resources Department, that I would make sure this would be addressed in a proper, professional manner. He shrugged in a way that told me nothing, and nothing told me everything. When the workday ended, the truth began to rearrange the furniture of my life. The next stage of the second act brought more changes. Dale, the coworker who had spoken so plainly about me, was moved to a different team, a fact that felt like a small mercy and a larger caution flag at the same time. It meant I did not have to share a break room or a hallway with him every day, which sounded like a relief and honestly was a relief. Yet life has a way of placing people in your path at awkward times, and we would still cross paths in those random places where two teams might find themselves in a shared hallway, in a shared coffee corner, or in an elevator that feels too small for all the words you have not spoken. The company told me they were working on transferring him to a different branch as soon as there was an opening, and they took care to separate our projects and avoid shared meetings. It was not the kind of victory I hoped for, but it felt like a step toward healing, a reminder that sometimes you win by avoiding the worst outcome rather than by getting a loud confession or a loud apology. Meanwhile, my own life began to change in a way I could not have predicted. I found a small studio that could be mine, a place that smelled faintly of fresh paint and possibility rather than the old apartment, which now carried the memory of a betrayal like a bruise that would not fade. I moved in with the help of a loyal friend who had already offered a spare couch and a listening ear, and the new space gave me something the old place never could: a chance to breathe without the echo of broken promises bouncing off the walls. It is a small studio, but it is mine, and there is a sense of calm that comes with knowing that this part of my life, at least, is entirely under my control. I throw myself into work, into the work of healing, and into the patient, sometimes grueling process of rebuilding a life that feels truthful. I begin to spend time with friends who remind me what it means to be cared for, people who listen when I speak, and who do not pretend to understand when I do not have the words to explain how the heart can hurt and still keep moving forward. There is a ritual I adopt during evenings, a routine that becomes a way to reclaim the night from the memory of that day. A ritual that includes a long walk through my neighborhood, a long walk through the stories I tell in my own photographs, and a long walk back to the place I call my own, where I can close the door and feel some portion of calm settle onto my shoulders. I also reach for something else that feels almost like a flame in a cold room. I decide to channel the pain into art, to tell a story that is larger than what happened to me, and that could perhaps help others who walk through the same rain. I begin to work on a project that is both a confession and a statement of truth. I collect the messages and the memories, but I do not reveal every name or every intimate detail. Instead, I craft a narrative in a way that feels safe and honest, a story that uses imagery and metaphor to show the consequences of deceit without turning into a public shaming parade. The project takes shape as a film piece and a small gallery showing that invites people to walk through a corridor of rooms, each room a chapter of a relationship that turned away from honesty and toward danger. I do not want to ruin anyone's life with the wrong words or with a careless release of private information, so I choose a path that is about the truth of what happens when trust is broken rather than a list of people to blame. The piece includes glimpses of text messages rewritten with the names hidden or altered, so that the focus remains on the moral of the story rather than on the private details of real people. I work with a friend who is an editor and a fellow photographer, and together we shape something that can travel from gallery to gallery, something that might travel beyond Portland if it finds the right audience. Act 3. They make a final attempt to solve the problem, which may succeed or fail. The moment of final attempt comes with a quiet meeting that feels like the first crack of dawn after a long night. I am the one who decides how to present the truth, not to harm, but to heal and to warn. I arrange a small opening at a local space that supports artists who risk telling difficult stories. I invite a handful of people who care about art and about truth, people who do not come with judgment, but with the open heart to listen. The piece is not loud on the surface. It does not assault the audience with anger. It speaks in a calm voice about the fragility of trust and the power of choosing to do the right thing even when the wrong thing is easy. As people move through the rooms, they encounter images of ordinary days turned toward the light, rooms where honesty was kept and rooms where it was broken, rooms where someone chose to leave and rooms where someone chose to stay and try to fix what was broken. The final room carries the heart of the piece, a scene of a person choosing renewal over revenge, a choice that does not erase the pain, but transforms it into a safer future. In a moment that feels almost ceremonial, Jonah, the person who was my partner through the years, does appear at the opening, and I am not sure what to expect. He watches in silence, the shame of his own actions washing over him like rain that has been waiting at the edge of a roof for a long time. He does not apologize, not here, not now, but the space holds him in a way that makes him confront the consequences, the real consequences, not the excuses he might tell himself later. I do not reach out to him in that moment. I do not demand anything. I stand with my back straight, and I let the art speak for me, the art that carries the weight of the truth that I chose to tell with care rather than with heat. What happens next feels less like a victory and more like a turning point. The audience responds with quiet nods of recognition, with small, sincere conversations afterward, with people who say that the piece made them think about their own lives, about how quickly trust can slip away and how slowly it can return if a person is willing to do the hard work of repairing it within themselves. Dale, the coworker who had spoken so plainly about my life, does not appear at the opening, and I do not seek him out. I am not here to puncture a pride that cannot be punctured with kindness. I am here to reclaim a sense of self that had been dimmed by betrayal. The company continues to adjust, and the transfer that had been promised to separate us happens in the way that is most practical for the business, and perhaps in a hidden way for my own sense of safety as well. I am told by friends that I have changed in a way that feels like rising from a long fall with a better understanding of the ground beneath my feet. I take this as a small triumph, not the loud triumph of a loud victory, but the quiet triumph of a life that is choosing truth over despair. In the months that follow, I begin to see a new normal take shape. The studio becomes more than a place to sleep and eat and work. It becomes a sanctuary where I can test ideas and let the fear of what happened slowly loosen its grip on me. I return to my camera with new eyes, not to prove anything to anyone, but to remember what it feels like to see the world clearly again. I learn to tell the truth in my work with a certain tenderness, to show both the light and the shadow without forcing a verdict onto the viewer. The old life fades into a memory that is sometimes painful, sometimes instructive, but always honest. And then there is a soft, almost unexpected turning of the weather inside me. I begin to make small steps toward the world of dating again, not with the desperation that used to haunt me after a breakup, but with a calm caution that feels mature. I meet new people, not to replace what I lost, but to expand what I can be. I discover a new bond with someone who respects the pace I set, who does not ask me to rush into anything, and who admires my art as much as my honesty. The relationship is not perfect, and it does not pretend to be. It is a partnership of two people who are learning how to trust again, a slow stitching of two lives that have known pain, but also the possibility of a kinder, more secure future. The final note in this long, winding tale is not a thunderclap of revenge, but a gentle conclusion that feels right for the person I am becoming. I have learned that the best revenge is not to ruin another person's life, but to reclaim my own life from the weight of deceit. The new Iris Calder, the one who walks the streets of Portland with a camera in her bag and a steady voice in her own ear, is not unchanged by what happened, but she is stronger for having walked through it. I still carry memories of the days when the walls of the apartment echoed with the sound of a lie whispering through the hall, memories of the times I doubted my own judgment, and the moments when I chose to walk away rather than fight a losing fight. The world has not become perfectly safe, and I cannot pretend that it has, but I have learned how to keep moving forward even when the ground shakes beneath me. I have learned to ask for help when I need it, to offer kindness when a moment calls for it, and to protect the parts of me that matter most, the parts that are not for sale to the lies of others. In the end, the odd and beautiful truth is that I found a way to use the ache of betrayal to fuel a brighter path, a path that does not erase the past, but lets it become a guidepost toward something truer and kinder. I am Iris Calder, and this is how I found my way through the storm and back into the light, here in Portland, where every street and every corner holds a memory and a chance to begin again.